All right, good afternoon. My name is Damon Richardson, and I'm Vice President of International Tax here at Google. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you all today to have an important and frankly candid conversation about what we can do to ensure the executive leadership pipeline includes us. Joining me to share his perspective, strategies, and tactics on how to best position yourself for advanced leadership opportunities as venture investor, business leader, and founder, Kobe Fuller. Kobe, welcome. So maybe just starting off with leadership. So now clearly there are a number of ways to lead, and leadership can look very different from one person to the next. Arguably, how someone thinks about leading can be traced back to early examples, personal experiences. As a sports fanatic and runner myself, I'm curious as to how your experiences with sports, specifically basketball and track, inform the type of leader you are and the type of leadership you've come to value today.
Yeah, so you mentioned basketball there, which is a little bit of a sore spot because I grew up loving basketball. That was all I did as a kid. And then it wasn't until freshman tryouts where I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to be schooling everyone on the court here. I'm going to be, I don't be a freshman team. I'll be on the varsity team at least. And then, yeah, I got cut. I did not make the team. And it was through that process that I realized that, okay, maybe I don't really have any skill, as the coach said at that point, but I had a couple other key things. I had heart and I had speed. And I took those two components and really fostered that into a reasonably successful track career, both in high school and in college. I was captain of my high school team, and I was captain of the Harvard team. That's going back in 2002. And I approached leadership at that point from multiple different angles. One really was being able to lead by example. If I was to be captain and I wanted the rest of the team to throw off points and really win their respective events, how could I be pushing them to do that if I wasn't actually doing that myself? And for me, it was all a function of making sure I was putting time in the weight room, the time on the track to be my best self, so that the moment when I was supposed to perform and actually win the race, I was able to do so. And track is a very, very, very pure sport in the fact that whatever you put into it in terms of all the training, all the hard work, you really get out in terms of the output on race day. That combined with the mental performance you have to apply towards making sure that you show up when it counts and you show up to your teammates. So when I think about leadership in the business setting, it's a lot of the same things. If I don't put in the work, if I don't do the appropriate level of preparation, research, understanding what I have to be bringing to the table to accomplish the task at hand, then how can I expect the people on my team to do the same? How can I expect them to bring their best selves and be able to perform in their respective slots if I don't do that myself? And then secondly, I need to make sure that I actually bring the appropriate mindset to the table. I just look at the way leaders are able to set tones, the way they're actually able to create emotion amongst their organizations. If I'm coming in every day and I'm frustrated because something bad happened in my personal life or we lost a deal and the rest of the team feels that affects them too. That's not the appropriate way to actually behave as a leader. You need to actually be able to set the tone in regards to what are we able to do at hand and really create an overall just approach and framework and experience where you are guiding them to wherever the goal may be. In the case of a track team, it's being able to win an overall meet. In the case of business, it's being able to hit your numbers in any given quarter. So that's how I think about leadership and how my sports background is super relevant to what I do in the business setting.
And Kobe, just out of curiosity, what was your event?
400 and 200.
All right. Did you have a favorite between the two?
Yeah, 200 because the 400 is brutal. The 400 is just and I also indoors. There's a 500, which is literally a 400 except you're running another 100 meters. That was just the most painful event possible. And technically, I probably would have been the fastest at the 800, But the amount of training that I had to go into doing proper 800-meter running, because that literally is almost like a sprint over 2 laps, I just didn't have it. I was not willing to put in that amount of work to be able to be the best 800-meter runner. Those folks are just a different breed of athlete. But I was able to run some pretty fast times in all those events, actually. But I concentrated on the 400 and 200. And I ran post-collegiate until I was 30, because partially that athletic mindset was something that helped really lead from not only to the on the track, but also kept me sharp in the actual boardroom and professional settings. It's something that I really latched onto for years.
Okay, that's fascinating. Now, maybe just reflecting for a moment here. I think earlier today, one of our presenters talked about how he approaches leadership more as a coach, so one who makes people around him better, as opposed to approaching leadership as a star player or someone who's a top performer. Now, how does this approach compare to your experience of what works in business?
Yeah, me personally, I actually like to approach it from both sides. And like an example is how I think about how I lead my portfolio companies, where I sit on the boards and I work with the founders. I definitely need to take the coaching approach, where part of what I need to do is see any gaps, see any weaknesses that person may have or that organization may have, and bring whatever I can to actually fill those holes and guide that CEO and also the founding team to whatever they need to get to in terms of performance. And then also I realize with regards to how you can be a coach, both in athletics and in the professional setting, the business setting, is that there's a lot of mindset techniques, mental coaching that really comes into play. So much of being a founder and CEO, and also as being an executive, is how do you make sure you mentally orient yourself to do the job at hand. And what I always find myself doing with my portfolio company CEOs is just checking in, asking, like, how are you doing? Like, are you okay? Like, that simple question sometimes is very important to ask, especially being a CEO where sometimes you're very lonely at top. There's like no one else really kind of in the same sort of peer sort of seat next to you in the organization. And just hearing what they say. And sometimes you have to mentally orient them, almost be like a psychologist of sorts, around being able to like battle through some blockers or emotional things they're tackling with. And things I help guide my CEOs through is how to keep a neutral mindset, where negativity many times can really tear you down and impede your ability to actually focus on what you need to do going forward. And the statistics show that negativity has a 4x to 7x impact on performance relative to positivity. And saying negative thoughts out loud has a 10x multiplier effect. So just being able to make sure my portfolio company CEOs aren't negative, aren't speaking negative thoughts out loud, impacting their organizations, is something that I just do and actually apply kind of coaching sort of principles to. With regards to how I think about leading by being a star sort of player as well, again, a lot of it's leading by example. How am I to try and push my portfolio company CEOs to excel in their job if they're not seeing me doing the same in my field? I think excellence really breeds excellence, and once you see other folks around you that are performing at that higher bar, it pushes you to actually want to perform at that same bar as well. And I kind of had the unfair advantage of being founder in addition to a venture investor, where I started Valence, and I went through the fundraising process, like raising external capital from someone else other than up front. And to be able to go through the process, we raised a pretty amazing Series A round from GGB, a top fund, with Hans Tung, one of the top investors in the world, where me as a founder, I pitched to another venture capital partnership. I had to put the narrative together. I had to hear no's from other folks as well, and I was able to get it done. I got it done, honestly, at lightning speed. So to have then my other portfolio companies go through their own fundraising process, like, I can speak with credibility around, like, hey, this is what you do, because I've actually done it before myself, literally in the last 12 months. It's a rare position to be in as a venture investor, to also have that experience as well. But I can see it. It just causes my portfolio company CEOs to realize, like, yeah, like we're we're performing at a really high bar here. Kobe ain't messing around. And that's what I want all the people I work with to really aspire to that high level of excellence. And if I'm not doing that myself, then it's hard for me to push them to do the same as well. Again, it goes back to that same stuff that I was doing on the track.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love what you said around negativity and kind of not letting that get in the way. I know certainly one of the things that I do as a leader is try to start off a lot of my conversation with what's good. Just trying to be able to ground us in some of the positive before we move on to some of the things that we have to necessarily solve for. So just trying to set the tone a little bit. But I love your statements and kind of the stats you shared around negativity. Now, there's an aspect of being an athlete that doesn't get as much attention as the wins and the struggle. It's the rest and the recovery aspect of being an athlete. You can't perform on meet day if you're burnt out, or if you're not focused on, if you're continually just focused on meet day, and not necessarily taking the rest. How did you transfer your career or strategies for balancing performing at the highest level, preparing to perform, and recovering from performance to the business world?
Yeah, you said it very well. In athletics, if you don't rest, your body breaks down. You're not supposed to constantly be running on all cylinders. You need to sometimes let the engine just chill out for a bit, refuel the tank, and then get back out there. And it's very evident with track, that's what you need to do. And business, it's the exact same. If you're constantly going out there and you're trying to win every deal, if you're in the role of a salesperson, or you're trying to code the best application if you're an engineer. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be working at all hours of the day and night if you really want to make sure you achieve that high level of excellence. But sometimes you got to pause. Sometimes there are moments where the more you put into it, the less you get out of it, and you're starting to see diminishing returns. And then suddenly you start seeing declining returns to the point where you then start breaking apart, just like muscles break apart. So rest is incredibly important. Rest is incredibly important for a couple of different reasons. One, it's just good for your mental sanity. And it's also good for probably any family members. They probably, if you have, if you have a significant other, or if you have kids, or if you have friends, they probably want to see you and probably want to spend quality time with you than you being partially absent on your phone, doing something else. Like, it's good to actually rest and be with family and loved ones. Second, I find rest is incredibly helpful to just take a step back and reset and then come back to the same problem with different perspective. You start seeing things from a different vantage point. And sometimes if you don't take a break, you'll be constantly doing the exact same thing and you don't really allow yourself to be creative because you start getting into this almost like tunnel vision method of execution. So for me, rest just helps me to kind of reset from that perspective. I also find resting by doing something else that may not be rest. So it's just like I'm just working a different muscle. So you think about like strength training, like you're constantly working out every day, but you're resting muscle groups. So there may be a given day where I'm in the gym and I'm working my chest hard. Next day, I'm not working chest. I'm probably not working shoulders. I'm working a totally different muscle group. I'm working my legs. But I'm not just sitting at home like sleeping and eating pizza. I'm still working out. So an equivalent is if I'm focusing on some sort of problem at work, I take a rest, I think about something else. I go off a different sort of process or area in terms of where I'm putting my efforts to. Or maybe I take a rest by lifting or working out, where it also is a really good way to stimulate other aspects of the body. Working out, actually, strength training, there is scientific data that shows that you actually are creating brain cells and getting smarter, believe it or not. So I actually rely on strength training daily as a way of rest from the office, believe it or not. So those are ways in which I actually apply the rest component for athletics to my professional life.
Yeah, and I totally feel you there. I mean, I think for me, kind of just having those moments where I'm able to kind of just break away, and for me, actually, it's running. Where if I can get out and go run for a couple of miles on any given day, it's just kind of gets the juices flowing in a whole different manner, and and sometimes sparks a whole different creative way of thinking about the same problem. So, no, definitely appreciate the comments there. So, if you don't mind, Kobe, I think one of the things I want to do is maybe shift gears to career paths. In terms of working for the nonprofit business world, you've had a number of roles: that of operator, that of board member, and that of investor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but those seem like different paths requiring different skill sets, different muscles, and maybe even different temperaments. What skills and personality traits do you most heavily rely on to be successful in each one of these three different areas?
Yeah, honestly, a lot of the prerequisites to being successful in any of those fields are one, just hard work. I mean, I just try to be the hardest worker in the room. And if you don't put in, again, that extra level of effort, the output you're going to get, whether you're an investor, you're a founder, an operator, is going to be suboptimal. So it's just working incredibly hard. I have an intellectual curiosity on the world. So I like to be constantly learning and constantly almost approaching life in a way where like I'm disrupting my own thinking. Because if you think about a world of technology and entrepreneurship that I spend most of my life in, there's entrepreneurs that are trying to disrupt the likes of Google and Facebook and Slack, and they're coming up with new innovative ways of tackling problems or creating software products that the world wants to use. And they're literally living in a world of disruption. So if I don't think about how I can constantly change the way in which I'm doing any given practice or approaching any given sort of way of investing or operating or marketing from a level of almost like pure disruption, then I'm not getting better. And that's the way I think you see this rapid sort of like evolution of skill sets. And that's frankly how I even shifted to the world of operating, leaving venture capital and becoming CMO of Revolve Clothing. I mean, I really disrupted myself. Like, I'm not going to be a VC anymore. I'm going to go from Boston, move to Los Angeles, and be head of marketing of a women's fashion company with no practical marketing experience outside of the fact that I invested in a bunch of marketing technology companies. My wife works in fashion, so I just theoretical perspective. But I really wanted to just like disrupt the way in which I thought before about like marketing, so it's a theoretical practice, and just throw myself into this world where suddenly there's this pressure from day one, like you have an ad budget, you have a lot of inventory in this warehouse, you better sell that stuff, or you can send yourself back off to Boston and get the hell out of here. And it allowed me to disrupt my thinking around like what it took to actually do this, because it's a totally different exercise than going off and convincing people to take my money. And then the last thing I'd say is just actually two more things. Neutral mindset. That's something that is applied towards any field of work. Can't say it enough. Make sure you're minimizing all negativity. It's so easy as individuals to weaponize yourself against yourself, which will then create a environment where you are just not fulfilling the best potential you have for yourself. Mm-hmm. So for me, it all comes down to making sure I don't get in my own head. And part of that could be, I'm not finding the best investments, or one of my portfolio companies is about to go out of business. So if I'm so wrapped up in that mindset, that's going to hit my ability to find the next company that could be right in front of my face. Or for instance, if someday like I was at Revolve and we were totally missing our numbers and our website conversions look like crap, just dwelling on that is not going to cause me to be thinking about what can I do to really reinvigorate our engagement by finding new tactics with regards to creating a new app, or finding ways to leverage influencer marketing in a way that people were never doing before, which at the time we started pioneering Instagram marketing with influencers. And that's the type of mindset you have to have, is really thinking about how do I shift into neutral, focus on where I need to go forward, and then make sure I'm trying to hit that goal. And the last thing is continually networking, meeting others. Can't say enough that creating relationships, having people that you can rely upon, you can call, that are there not in some transactional manner as well, mm-hmm. like true relationships, dare I say they're friends that are there for you and you're there for them. And you're not approaching the dynamic as one where like, what can this person do for me? If this person can do something for me, I'll keep them around. If they can't, I don't want them around. A lot of people approach networking like that, and that is honestly like the worst way, in my opinion, to think about how do you actually create a group of people around you, and hopefully you can help them and they can help you. So those are the things that honestly have allowed me to, I think, succeed in those three areas, and honestly are common across any field or any practice.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And I guess out of curiosity, Kobe, what do you think? I mean, if someone were to say, how do I determine what path is best for me? What advice would you give somebody if they were to ask that question?
Yeah, it's for me, it's all about, well, first off, don't try to script out your life years in advance. Like, oh, my path is going to be, I'm going to go to business school, then I'm going to work at like this PE fund, and then I'm going to do this and this and this, and I'm going to marry this person. No, like that to me, in my opinion, is like the worst way to think about like your path. I like to think about how do I find a field or an area that I am so passionate about that drives me, where potentially can pull out a level of execution and operating ability that another field or the area would not have the ability to do so, because I'm so maniacally focused and excited about doing that line of work that I'm growing. I'm constantly learning. I'm getting smarter. I'm getting challenged day in and day out, and I'm enjoying the day. Like, I'm enjoying also who I'm around and who I associate with, who I call my peers, who report to me, who I report to. And the second where you actually feel like some of those things are starting to miss or lack, or you're getting bored, then I feel like you should be thinking about like, hey, what's next? If it's not here, where is it? Where can I find those things? Where can I start feeling like I'm on that growth trajectory, but also that place where I just feel passionate and so excited, and I'm enjoying the work. And that's what really pulled me across my journey, was really finding and going after sort of like those key, those pillars that allow me to fundamentally just enjoy life, but also just enjoy my professional life too.
Yeah, no, I think once you find that sweet spot, that area that you're passionate around at any given point, I mean, yeah, it's amazing how much energy and fulfillment you can kind of get out of that. But yeah, it's a journey, right? And so what you may be passionate about at any given moment may change over time, but it definitely is a journey. So of the three paths, whether it's operator, board member, investor, are they really as different as they seem? Would you say that there's transferable skills between the three ways or the three paths?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of transferable skills, but they are different in terms of your role and your responsibility. As an investor, your job really is to invest in companies and to really have a fiduciary responsibility to the individuals, if you're investing someone else's money, to multiply that in a way where it returns whatever the return threshold that you actually articulated to them through whatever fundraising process you went through to actually create a fund, if it is a fund that you're managing. And that's going to guide you around making sure that you're finding the right targets that you put money into that meet that objective. If you are an operator, it's totally different. There's a much shorter feedback or response loop that you are seeing relative to the day-to-day goals that you're going after. Again, my job at Revolve, like literally, we went to run a marketing campaign. You see results like the next day, and you're constantly testing, iterating. It's not working, then you stop, you pause, you iterate, and you relaunch other tests. You may have like hundreds of tests going on at any moment in time. That's dramatically different than the role of an investor, where I don't know if I'm right or wrong until maybe like 7-10 years later. And then suddenly you're like, okay, I'm good at this job. You may not know you're good at investing at VC until it's like literally a decade later. So that's why, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. And as a board member, you kind of have like a toe in the water with regards to being operationally in the mix of a business, but you're not the one running the test. You're not the one actually pulling the levers. You're the one working with the operators that are pulling the levers and giving them advice, guidance, feedback, whether good or bad, around what they should be doing better, what they should be pausing, and then ideally supporting them where you can if you're an investor board member with follow-on capital, or street advice around just how do you navigate this thing to potentially an eventual exit, which hopefully makes everyone around the table good money.
Makes total sense. There's so much ground I want to cover with you. Let's go on to entrepreneurship. So, I think one of the questions are just, let me make a statement here. So I think in your venture capital work, you've supported, developed entrepreneurs in their startups. I've got to imagine that a significant factor in your successful venture capital track record is your ability to pick winners. Now, what strategies or tactics have helped you identify which opportunities are good bets and which ones aren't?
Yeah, it all comes down to the founder who you're investing in. Because at the end of the day, our job is to trust someone with money. And if I can't trust someone to take just a dollar and then use that dollar to hopefully plant a seed and reap a harvest, then I shouldn't be giving them a dollar. But is that pure? So when I talk to founders, if I see signals around them not being truly authentic, there's ways in which I actually catch people lying when they're pitching their company. And people they try to, they're not intentionally lying, but they're exaggerating the truth around here's a partner that we work with, or people that are advisors, and I'm Ryan's an advisor? I'm gonna text him right now, and Ryan's I don't know that guy. But I met him once, and I'm in that guy's deck, and tell him to remove me. But honestly, I just look for people that I can trust, which is kind of crazy to say that's a factor, but that is a real thing. People lose a lot of money by folks that actually aren't folks you should be trusting with money. But beyond that, I look for founders that are mission driven. They are trying to build something that is bigger than themselves, that comes from a place of true authenticity. So the reason why they're doing it makes sense relative to their personal storylines. So when you hear about their journey pre-starting this business, and then suddenly there's a moment where they're starting this company, you're okay, that makes sense. It kind of follows, and then you start looking at the vision they're articulating for where this wants to go, and okay, based on what you've done over your life, both personal and professionally, has it prepared for this moment to build this business that can be that several billion-dollar company that you're paying in front of me. And ideally, they're paying a vision that's that exciting, that's that big. For me, as an early-stage venture investor, managing a fund that's $400 million, I'm looking for companies that have potential to be worth billions of dollars. So if I don't see a founder, then it's also thinking on that level, thinking without limits, and thinking they have the ability to build something that's world-changing, then I'm not excited about partnering up with them.
Right.
And I also like ideas that are really, really crazy. I don't like mundane iterations on the same concepts. I like hearing ideas where you're wow, that's a thing? That just sounds like the craziest thing ever. And I also get even more excited when I mention ideas to my partners in Monday morning meetings. Yeah. And I get your eyes squint. I'm what are you looking at? That sounds like the dumbest thing ever. Then I'm just if you think it's the dumbest thing ever, then it's either the dumbest thing ever, or maybe the most brilliant thing ever that ends up being worth millions of dollars. But at the end of the day, some of the best wins that I've had over my career, I've been called a moron. Exact Target, for instance, the company I invested in 2004, when I was a wee old analyst, and people at the time were reacting to the fact that I wanted to invest in what was called an email blaster as the dumbest thing ever. I eventually was able to convince everyone to put money in this business that ended up being worth, going public and being acquired by Salesforce for a few $1 billion. Okay. But that's kind of how you have to think about your job as a VC, is to be contrarian and be comfortable sometimes being the dumbest person in the room, but you may be the smartest person in the room, and being the money where your mouth is when you really have that level of conviction and just taking risks.
Yeah, It seemed like thick skin is probably a key thing that you got to have as, in that role. Now, would you say you're better at picking winners or better at avoiding the non-winners?
I am good at dodging non-winners, but I think I'm probably better at picking winners because I don't think of the non-winners. That makes sense. Like I have a mindset where I'm more searching for excellence. I'm searching for that A company, because when you see excellence, when you see firsthand companies that are worth billions and billions of dollars and founders that have started from like literally scratch and scale to that level, you're constantly searching for that again. And then when you don't see it is when you need to be very focused and just disciplined as a VC to not be like, okay, but this is a good company anyway, and I can see how it's worth like a decent amount of money, and I can make money. Like, no, that's where you can run into trouble. Is where if you sacrifice not looking for true excellence when you know what it is, and that's what drives me. Is like it's until I see excellence where every bit in my body is like, yeah, this is it. I've seen this before, and I'm going to drop everything to make sure I can convince this founder to take my money and go on this journey with them. Like, that's what drives me in the job. And so it's more around picking winners and honestly avoiding losers, I guess.
Yeah, I get it. No, so in terms of the entrepreneurs, what are some of the ways you've seen entrepreneurs get in their own way? I mean, I'd love to hear a story about how you've had to coach them to get out of their own way.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the biggest way entrepreneurs get in their own way is they just get over their skis. The most common failure for businesses is run out of cash. So they swing for the fences way too much, where their cash burn is way too high. They're not really measuring the feedback to how they're spending that cash in a way where they're seeing, is this actually driving performance, or am I just like torching money without learning about anything from what I'm doing here? And then they're not thinking about, how do I manage my runway, where if I'm starting to get to the point where I'm approaching the brick wall, do I either have a plan for appropriately capitalizing this business far enough in advance where I'm not worried about getting into the red zone, or do I have a plan for which I'm going to tick over and can cut burns so I give myself enough runway? Or dare I say, do I have a plan where I reach profitability? So many people run businesses where it's like, I'm constantly burning cash because there's constantly $100 out there, but like you can run a nice profitable business that's self-sustaining. But the biggest thing I've seen founders run into trouble with is just burning way too much cash, getting over their skis, and then they run out of time. And sometimes they think they're going to go to their venture investor and be like, hey, like, you supported me, like, you're just going to give me like an extension on the last round. And I'm just like, really? You think that's the case? Like, I mean, again, like, maybe I will if I trust them with my money. But if suddenly during the process of me investing in you, you show me that I shouldn't have trusted you with my money and I made a mistake, then there's no way I'm going to give you any more. And that's where founders run into trouble, is that they abuse that trust, and then they realize like they lost trust in their investors and there's not like another penny left, and then they run out of cash and then the thing goes out of business. So that's honestly the biggest way founders run into trouble that I've seen.
Okay. Now, and I hear you keep bringing up trust throughout this conversation. So clearly, something that we all need to kind of have as a takeaway from this discussion here. Now, so if we bring this back to our community, what would you say are those lessons or practices which Black professionals who are employees might borrow or adapt from successful entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I'd say this is some basic things in life. Again, like we say, talk about trust. We talk about, not being negative, about hard work. But one real key thing in life, I think, is authenticity. Just being your true self and not sacrificing that for anything. Lots of people can find themselves in a job or a career where to fit in, they have to be someone else. But what they don't realize is by being someone else, they're not being themselves. And because they're not being themselves, they're not tapping into those true hidden talents that will actually be able to really showcase excellence and drive incredible performance. And for me, that's where I think that any operator in whatever role they're in is if they can't be their true authentic self, then they should, one, like be their authentic self, or two, find a place where they can be their authentic self. For some reason, that organization wouldn't support that. That shows that there's a bigger problem at stake, and it's also going to breed into your lack of happiness and commitment to the role. But lastly, what I think is also really important around how operators can borrow basics from founders is you're not going to behave like an owner. And I think any operator, whether you are an owner or not, you should behave like an owner. You should behave like you actually truly have something at stake in the company, and that your work product is so important that if it was suboptimal, it would affect the value of this thing you own. And you should have a sense of pride around this entity that you're working for that you are a part owner of. And so many people that I find that behave like employees, like they behave like they're just checking in, checking out. It shows in their work product, it shows in their passion, and it just shows in their overall just demeanor and excitement towards the role. And again, if you're not behaving like an owner, you should also find a place where you truly do want to be an owner. And that's ultimately, I think, what you see in the most high quality successful founders, because they are owners, and it's truly their company at stake.
I love that. Think like an owner. Maybe moving on to family here. Let's touch on this, because I think in preparing for this discussion, I kind of did a little bit of research and come to understand that family is extremely important to you. It seems like you've talked about how a big part of the reason you attended Harvard was to stay close to your family, and now you have a family of your own. How does your persona at work compare to your home persona?
Yeah, I'm the board member in the house, and I just tell everyone neutral, and I boss around them. I like to chill out a bit, honestly. I got amazing wife. She has her own business as well called Miles Milan. It's a kids clothing brand that's doing quite well, and I'm excited to see her growth there. And I have two boys, one's 5 and one's 3. Both crazy, nutty kids, and I just try to be the best, husband and father possible to my family. And a lot of that, honestly, is being present when it's time for me to be present, being supportive to my better half when she needs me, whether it's supporting her work endeavors or supporting her emotionally in anything, and just being a good husband. And then being a father that can be, a leader to these two boys, and truly just guide them and coach them, correct them when they're being knuckleheads like all 5 and 3-year-old kids are. But that's kind of what is what you need to do as a father. And I try to take some of those principles from business and apply it to the home where it makes sense, but you gotta soften up a little bit in some respects, because family life is definitely a different dynamic than the boardroom.
Yes, indeed. And so, do you feel like there's specific parts of your professional personality that you have to turn up or turn down in order to be the kind of family man you want to be?
No, I mean, I'm probably not near. Oh, actually, no. I was going to say I'm probably not nearly as aggressive and direct, but I don't know. Find me on a day where my boys are acting up, I'm pretty aggressive and direct with them. So, no, I mean, home, for instance, I love to cook, so I'm the one that's usually cooking all the meals in the household. So I'm turning up probably a higher level of creativity. The fact that every meal, I kind of oddly enough, I like being an experience. I like to eat, so I like to cook food that I like to eat. So I'm always coming up with something interesting in the kitchen every evening. So if anything, I'm probably exercising the creative muscle a bit more at home. and it's really
Okay.
it's a good outlet to have versus what I do day to day.
All right. So, what's your best dish?
My best dish. I like duck. I like a good duck breast. I'm really good into just like good high quality meat and protein. So
All right.
I love duck.
All right. All right. So I'm a father of two black sons myself. So I think one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, given that you did mention that you're the father of black sons, what are they learning about black leadership from your example and from your experience? How are you, weaving that into the conversations you're having at home?
Yeah, I honestly am always making sure that they understand their background and their ethnicity. We have nightly story time, and we have recently been reading a book about prominent black men over the years. And just last night, they learned about Prince, where it went through and we talked about Prince's story, and then afterwards we put on a Prince song, and it helped them really kind of again learn around these figureheads that have many times over the years, given just the last kind of couple centuries, have gone through the challenges of really navigating and being leaders as black men and standing up in their respective roles. With Arthur Ashe, just a couple of days ago, we spoke about, and that's what I like to do is tell stories of others, and hopefully they get to see my story firsthand, appreciate it as
Right.
they grow older and start understanding a little bit more what's going around.
So, Kobe, I could have kept going, but unfortunately, it seems like we've got to bring this conversation to a close. But again, before we break, just a huge thank you to you. Thank you for carving out the time to spend with us today, and definitely for just engaging. I thought everything that you had to say was extremely insightful, inspiring. So, thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure many, aside from myself, will appreciate all that you said today.
Thanks for having me. This was fun, and hope everyone's enjoying the content today.
All right. Thank you.